Dr. Mirudhubashini Govindarajan from Women's Center by Motherhood at Coimbatore. Another frequent question that get asked is that can you find out whether the baby is going to be normal or not? This question comes up more often from parents who have had abnormal babies before, or carry a genetic trait in a family, or close relatives having married with the same problem running in the family. Those kind of situations is where this question arises more often, and we have to resort to certain more advanced techniques which are possible today. The second day after fertilization in the laboratory, the embryo has 4 cells. The third day it has 8 cells, and even if you remove 1 cell out of this embryo, the embryo does grow normally to make a whole baby. This was done in the beginning a decade or 2 ago, and the cell was then processed in the genetic laboratories in a process called DNA amplification. They amplify the DNA in that cell, and then you can check the DNA to find out whether the genetic problem exists in that particular embryo or not. Nowadays, we don't do the day 3 embryo biopsies. The embryo biopsies are generally done on day 5 embryos, or what we call blastocysts today. By the stage of blastocyst, the embryo already has what we call an inner cell mass, which will be the cells which will make the baby in the future, and an outer ring of cells which will make the placenta and the membranes later. So the biopsy is actually taken from the outer cells and not from the inner cells where the embryo is made. And when you take the cells, you usually now end up taking more than 1 cell because it's not taken from the embryo. And these cells again can be checked to find out whether the embryo is absolutely normal or not. And genetic tests of various kinds can be done just with 1 or 2 cells, or the few cells that we take from the outer part of the embryo on a day 5 embryo. And diagnosis of very complex genetic abnormalities can be made in those embryo before it's put back inside the womb of the uterus. So if a number of embryos are obtained in a single IVF cycle, now we have the ability to say that out of that number of embryos, how many are chromosomally and genetically normal or not. So we can actually, do have the ability to today here in India to make out whether an embryo is normal or not before we replace the embryos.